the laptop from hell that we at the New York Post wrote about and then got censored by big tech. At the time, that was before the 2020 election, and we didn't really understand like how this was happening. We just thought, oh, Twitter and Facebook are just woke and they want Joe Biden to win, so they're censoring us. But what we found out after the election, in part thanks to Elon Musk opening up the Twitter files, and also because of a whole lot of once the Republicans took the House in 2022, or after 22, they got to subpoena a whole lot of documents and also interview witnesses. Plus, whistleblowers from the FBI told us that the reason that Twitter and Facebook censored us was because they'd been warned by the FBI for weeks ahead of our story even appearing to look out for a Russian hack and leak operation, likely in October, likely involving Hunter Biden. And so when Twitter and Facebook saw our story on October 14, 2020, they recognized it immediately as the Russian hack and leak dump.
How would the FBI know?
Well, the FBI was spying on Rudy Giuliani, who was Donald Trump's personal lawyer. They, unbeknownst to him, they had a covert surveillance warrant on his iCloud. And so they would have had access to the email that came to him in August of 2020 from John Paul MacIsaac, who was, I think you've interviewed him,
yes,
the laptop repair shop owner who had the laptop that Hunter had abandoned at his shop. And the FBI had actually subpoenaed that laptop in December of 2019. They had it in their possession. They'd had it for 10 months when they were telling Twitter and Facebook, oh, no, this is Russian disinformation, you must censor. So, and then a few days after we were censored, out comes the Dirty 51 letter, and it was the open letter by 51 former intelligence officials, most of them CIA, I think 42 ex-CIA, including John Brennan and Leon Panetta and James Clapper. There were 5 either directors or acting directors of the CIA who signed that dishonest letter that said that the laptop was Russian disinformation and therefore our reporting was Russian disinformation. They said it had all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation. So now if any of them respond to any questions about it and they just say, well, we didn't say it was Russian disinformation. We said information operation, same thing. And they knew because they leaked it to Politico and then the Washington Post and New York Times picked it up and all the headlines were Russian disinformation, the laptop. So that killed the story stone dead. And 2 days later, Joe Biden gets up on stage with Donald Trump in the last debate and he uses that letter to basically get out of jail free, and the story never, ever became anything. But what we now know is that that letter was not just signed by these formers, but that it was cleared by the internal CIA classification review board in record time. And even they saw it and thought it was overtly political just 3 weeks before an election. So they sent it upstairs to Gina Haspel, who was then the CIA director under Donald Trump. And she gave it the green light to be published immediately. And so the Dirty 51 letter was actually a domestic CIA interference operation with the election. And, that just boggles your mind once you realize.
What happened to Gina Haspel?
Well, she obviously left and she now has a job in it's either a law firm or something. It's one of the, stables that disloyal Democrat lovers end up going and making lots of money in.
But never punished. Retains her security
not.
Clearance.
Of course. All of them do. All the 51. And in fact, several of these signatories are not just former CIA people, but they're active CIA contractors today. And
but why not pull that? I've never understood. No one has a right to a security clearance, period. And people have them pulled all the time. Unpopular people have their security clearances pulled, at which point they can't work for the U.S. government. And they don't have access to information that I, as a taxpayer, don't have access to. Why not just pull their security clearances? Like every single one of them, day one.
Well, I mean, that's what Donald Trump should have done.
Yeah.
But he had a couple of months, I guess, and it took a while for this all to settle in, everyone to really understand what they did, that they actually did interfere with the election. Because, I mean, we know now from polls that enough Biden voters would have changed their vote if they'd known about Joe Biden's corruption. Even if they just knew that he'd been lying to the American people during the campaign when he said, I know nothing about my son Hunter's overseas business dealings. And yet we had on the front page an email from Hunter's Ukrainian sort of paymaster from that company Burisma, who had thanked Hunter for introducing him to his father in Washington, D.C., the then sitting vice president. We found out after the election that was a dinner at Cafe Milano, which you probably know in Georgetown, that Hunter...
Gone there all my life.
Yeah. Well, Hunter organized that for his father, the vice president, in a private room to meet with his Ukrainian business partners, plus Russian, plus Kazakhstanis. He did a 3-for-1 deal in April of 2015. And Joe Biden denied that he'd ever met these people. He sat down, he had dinner. And it was only when the Washington Post, just trying to fact check my story about the Cafe Milano dinner, their four Pinocchios people were Glenn Kessler was certain that, I'd made it up or it was wrong.
They're four Pinocchios people.
And the White House then admitted to Glenn Kessler, never to me, that yes, Joe Biden did go to that dinner, but he didn't do it for any nefarious purpose and he only stayed for a short time, which is not true because someone who was there told me that he was there for the entire dinner. And he might not, it's not like Joe Biden is going to talk about the finer details of, how much money you're going to pay Hunter, but he just has to show up and be charming and be the vice president for all the money to flow into Hunter's pockets.
Has he ever answered any substantial questions about this?
No. The only time that he's sort of asked the questions is actually by the New York Post's Washington correspondent Stephen Nelson and by Peter Doocy, from Fox News. And all they managed to do is shout questions across to him.
But in all the interviews that Biden has done as president in 4 years, no reporters ever said, let's just go through this for a second.
No. Oh, no. There was someone, I think, might have been CBS. It was a woman. They were standing up. He gets very aggressive. And then the Axios, there was an Axios reporter too. Joe Biden, people underestimate his aggressiveness. He's very good at it. He's very nasty. And so if you ask him a question he doesn't like, it's almost like this narcissistic rage. It's quite frightening, and you see reporters recoil. And you ask him anything around Hunter's or the family corruption, because it's just also Joe's younger brother, Jim Biden, he gets very aggressive and nasty and pushes back. So he's successful in that.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.